The mysterious moon. From the beginning of recorded time, people have gazed up at the mysterious moon and came up with all sorts of explanations for what it is, how it was formed, and what it does for us down below on Earth. When the space program sent rovers, probes, and people to the moon, they brought back rocks and loads of information about many aspects of our only natural satellite. They also brought back questions. Does the science support the standard explanations, or are there clues to more mysterious truths? From when the moon was formed to its material makeup, and whether it's really just a chunk of orbiting rock or something else entirely, these mysteries captivate the mind and imagination. How old is the moon? There are no ancient mysteries hiding away on mountaintops to tell us the day the moon first appeared in the sky above Earth. There are no mysterious scrolls, tablets, or cave paintings to herald its appearance. The moon was always known to be much older than recorded history, much older than dinosaurs, or even the first protozoa to wiggle around in the primordial ooze. Now it seems the moon is even older than anyone originally thought. When you consider the huge amount of time involved with creating moons and planets, timing can be tricky. Scientists used known radioactive decay rates to calculate age based on lunar samples. They also determined scenarios that would make a moon form at all. The regularly accepted moon formation method was a collision of some planet-sized chunk with Earth. This impact melted Earth's crust, drove heavier metals like iron down to the core, and broke off pieces that eventually coalesced into the moon. This best guess for moon formation and the careful study of zircon crystals and lunar dust collected during the Apollo missions puts the birthday of the moon back at 4.51 billion years ago. That's just 60 million years after the solar system was born. However, further analysis of other moon rocks and dust point to an even earlier creation date. Some rocks have been dated using various radioactive decay methods to be 5.3 billion years old, and scientists have found dust that seems to be 6 billion years old clinging to them. The real origin of moon rock. It makes sense that the rocks found on the moon and brought back by lunar astronauts actually came from the moon itself. Other viable explanation is that they originated as part of asteroids or other space rocks hitting the moon and causing all those famous craters. The origin of moon dust, which was also brought back by the first astronauts in large quantities, should have the same origin story, right? The commonly held belief was that the dust was formed from the rocks shifting around and breaking, much as sand is formed on Earth from larger pebbles and rocks. The mysteries surrounding the moon extend to its very rocks and dust, which are not at all what people expected. In fact, the moon rocks and dust were so different they could not have come from the same place after all. To add another layer of mystery, some rocks from the moon are magnetic. Some of the rocks retrieved from the lunar surface include metals that are only created on Earth by actual human-assisted processes. These include brass, a zinc-copper alloy, uranium-236, a waste material from nuclear fuel, and neptunium-237, another waste material of plutonium creation in nuclear reactors. How did the waste products created during nuclear research and fuel production end up in rocks on the moon? In contrast to the unique properties of some lunar rocks, the dust tracked in and gathered by the astronauts seems quite commonplace. It consists mainly of silicon dioxide glass, iron, calcium, and magnesium. All these minerals are naturally found on Earth and can also be the result of meteorite impacts. The moon's lighter core. Like other orbiting bodies in our solar system, the moon most likely formed from gravity and rotation pulling debris and dust together to form a relatively spherical shape. This action has a unique side effect of moving heavy materials to the core of a planet or moon and keeping the lighter ones closer to the surface. This is why the Earth has an iron core, for example. However, contrary to prevailing expectations, the moon did not follow this same path. Like the Earth, the moon has a crust, mantle, and core. Each layer holds different types of materials. There are few reasons why some researchers suppose that the moon's core is lighter than it should be and does not follow the same patterns as others. We have the most research about the lunar surface, after all, from probes and rocks brought back by astronauts. The rocks on the surface of the moon hold what are known as refractory elements. These include the very heavy metal titanium, iron, and uranium. Why are they still on the surface of the moon after all these billions of years? Another question stems from the lack of a magnetic field. Earth has one because of the iron core. Moon may have had one in the far past, but no longer does. However, surface rocks had some magnetic properties. These two things point to some incredible event that pulled the metals to the surface of the moon, thus destroying or disrupting the magnetic field surrounding it. What this event could have been remains a mystery. Clouds and vapor water. The atmosphere surrounding Earth is full of water vapors and clouds all the time. This gives us weather systems and facilitates the life-giving water cycle. However, there's no real atmosphere on the moon, so no possible water vapor flying around. That's what many scientists would believe until a very odd occurrence on March 7th, 1971. What passes for the atmosphere up there is actually called an exosphere because of the huge amount of space between the gases that make it up. Nothing bumps into each other or mixes because there are only about 100 molecules of various gases in a centimeter, as opposed to the 100 billion found around Earth. This lack of atmosphere should make clouds impossible. We do not see any when we look up through telescopes, and the astronauts saw none while walking around up there. When astronauts went to the moon, they collected rocks and other samples and left instruments behind to record various things and sent data back to NASA on Earth. One of these recorded the stunning occurrence in 1971. A cloud around 100 square miles in diameter of water vapor gathered and floated over the lunar surface for about 14 hours before vanishing again. This appearance coincided with several moonquakes and liquid water bursting forth from geysers in various locations on the surface of the moon. Rocks with magnetic properties. Many of the rocks on the surface of the moon contained unusual metals that are usually more concentrated near the cores of planetary bodies. Another characteristic that followed this path was the magnetic properties of those same rocks. The Earth's core, for example, is magnetic. The iron and other metals that make it up would have magnetic properties if you somehow drag them up to the surface and wave them around some bits of metal. On the moon, the rocks that share these characteristics were just lying about on the ground for astronauts to pick up and take home with them. Perhaps the most unusual fact surrounding these rocks is that the moon itself does not have a magnetic field. The Earth's magnetic field helps to block or repel the dangerous charged particles flying off the sun and across space in the solar wind. The moon does not have that type of protection. So, where'd the magnetic rocks come from? There are two theories about where the rocks got their magnetism. First, scientists theorize that the moon used to have a magnetic field, but something catastrophic happened that destroyed it. Perhaps some massive asteroid or meteorite slammed into the moon and the shock waves displaced the core materials. Perhaps it had high magnetic properties and pulled the iron to the surface. Another theory states that the magnetized rocks did not originate on Earth or the moon, or even the ancient planet that slammed into one to form the other. Alien theories abound when it comes to the mysteries of the moon. Perhaps they're more accurate than science might think. The volcanic explanation. When you look up at the moon overhead at night, it's easy to see the many craters decorating its surface. You do not need a powerful telescope to notice that it's not flat and smooth. Most craters up there were formed from asteroids and other space rocks slamming into the moon's crust and making impact marks. Rocks and dust spewed up around them to form the rough edges. Not all the craters formed due to the impact from the outside, however. Quite a few originated on the inside of the rocky sphere. What caused these big pits and holes to form? Similar craters exist on Earth at the top of dormant volcanoes, but the moon itself was long said to have had no volcanic eruptions at all. This was generally thought to be true because the moon was supposedly too cold at all times in the past for volcanic activity. Some recent research challenges this claim, however. For approximately 100 million years before our moon succumbed to the coldness of space, it was potentially quite active with volcanoes and lava fields. These heated up the moon itself and may have even contributed some type of volcanic ash cloud atmosphere. The most recent volcanic vents have been shown to be about 10 million years old. As space telescopes and photography get more detailed, more unique characteristics of the moon's surface are coming to light. However, many of the strange channels, openings in the surface, and inverted craters cannot be explained away by ancient volcanoes. Although lava flows and eruptions may have helped shape the moon, they cannot be responsible for all the mysterious anomalies found there. Mascons in the moon. The word mascon is formed by combining mass and concentration. They are defined as particular dense or heavy structures or collections of matter that create a stronger gravitational pull than the surrounding material. On the moon, there are unusual lunar mascons that make some part of the land have more gravity than others. Due to the stronger gravitational pull of the mascons on the moon, considerable problems with planning the Apollo missions occurred. Was there some reason behind where these spots show up on the lunar surface? Or are they just matters of chance determined by how it was formed? Although they could have natural origins based on the random collection of heavier rocks or metal deposits in an area, the ones on the moon have some characteristics that create a mystery. When an asteroid or another space rock hits the surface, it creates not only a crater but shock waves that redistribute the materials in the crust in concentric rings. The heavier the material, the shorter distance it travels away from the point of impact. This makes unique patterns of gravity in these areas. The mystery arises when you find out that rings around craters do not account for many of the mascons. Instead, they're found in the moon's maria, the heavy flat deposits that form the darker planes on the surface. The gravitational excess comes from large circular masses not on the surface of the moon, but buried between 20 and 40 miles underneath it. The regularity of these objects and their positioning under the maria, instead of in craters, suggests some type of artificial origin. Are these mysterious disks some type of extraterrestrial construction? Were they intended to upset the normal gravitational pull? Or is that just a side effect of their mass? Moonquakes and geysers. With no unbalanced core, no volatile atmosphere, and no volcanic activity, it seems like the moon should be nothing more than a dead hunk of rock orbiting our planet. However, this is not totally true. Every year, hundreds of moonquakes happen and are recorded by lunar researchers. Some may occur due to meteors hitting the surface and creating a concussion shockwave through part of the crust. Some remain unexplained. Not only does the moon shake about for no obvious reason, there's also plenty of reports of geysers or gas eruptions at various spots on the observable side of it. Nikolai A. Kozyrev, the professional Soviet astronomer, reported in a 1958 one such eruption. Besides a plume of material coming off the lunar surface, he also said that a red glow accompanied it. About 5 years later, astronomers at the Lowell Observatory witnessed similar glows on another part of the moon's surface. What makes these eruptions so intriguing is the fact that no volcanic activity is supposed to have occurred there for millions of years. However, these identical red lights have no other possible scientific explanation. The overwhelming opinion is that these rare yet important events are not the last geological blasts of a cooling moon, but instead something much more mysterious. The audit radioactive rocks, strange gravitational anomalies, the light or non-existent core, and possibly buried masses much denser than the surrounding rock all lead to the idea that there's some intelligent force at work on our closest space neighbor. Could these geysers, red lights, and even the moonquakes be the result of something taking place on the scene below the surface? Is the moon hollow? While some theories state that the core of the moon is lighter than the upper mantle and crust, others believe that it's completely hollow instead. This might sound fantastical to the average person, but some very real science backs up the idea. Also, some of the more mysterious characteristics of our orbiting natural satellite contribute to the idea that some or all of the interior basically consists of cavities and caverns. Earth has a mean density of 5.5 grams per cubic centimeter. The moon measures in at only 3.3 grams per cubic centimeter, which makes it much less dense than expected. When lunar modules and people started going to the moon, the amount of data gathered was considerably enough for even NASA scientists to take notice of the unusual properties. Dr. Gordon MacDonald stated in 1962 that after poring over the astronomical data collected, that it all pointed toward a hollow interior rather than one filled with rocks and minerals. Dr. Harold Urey, a Nobel chemist, put forth the idea that the moon had much lower density because the interior was filled with empty cavities. Dr. Sean C. Solomon from MIT suggested the frightening possibility that the moon might be hollow. Why he found this frightening was not explained unless it opened up his mind to the thought that the empty space within the moon was being used for some purpose. Carl Sagan wrote in his book, Intelligent Life in the Universe, that a natural satellite cannot be a hollow object. Instead of suggesting that the moon could not be hollow because it was simply a conglomeration of space rock and dust, he intimated that it was not actually a natural celestial body at all. Echoes in the moon. One of the most compelling pieces of information that leads to the idea that the moon has a low-density, lightweight core or is completely hollow was the time in 1969 when it turned into a giant echoing bell. On November 20th of that year, part of the ascending machinery of the lunar module was jettisoned away from the rest of the craft as intended by the crew. It flew away from the landing site of the Apollo 12 space vehicle and landed approximately 40 miles away. When it landed, of course, it made quite an impact with the surface. This triggered a man-made moonquake that shook the lunar surface for over an hour. A similar moonquake occurred when the Apollo 13 third-stage boosters were purposely directed at the moon to retest for the same results. The scientists were not disappointed. Not only was there a quake in both of these situations, but the moon itself was also said to ring or reverberate like a bell. It is not only the metal that creates a bell that makes a ring, it's the empty space inside that makes the echoes and reverberations bounce back and forth for an extended period of time. If the moon rang like a bell, it seems that its structure must be quite similar. The data collected after the Apollo 13 contact showed echoes and reverberations that traveled through 25 miles of the moon's crust and lasted for more than 3 hours. The length and depth of this unique phenomenon point directly to the moon having a hollow interior. Strange metallic properties. The heavy metals and other minerals found in the rocks that litter the surface of the moon showed unusual properties not found anywhere on Earth. Besides this fact, other material surprises occurred when astronauts attempted to drill down into the moon's maria. The term maria, plural for mare and meaning sea, was first used by astronomers of old who believed the dark patches on the moon were actually oceans. Instead, they're mostly flat plains of dense stone. The astronauts' inability to drill effectively points to the moon's crust being particularly hard and dense. While some of the maria surfaces contained regular rocks like basalt, they were also found to have very unusual metallic properties that the researchers did not expect. These flat, dark places on the lunar surface are mostly created from a mineral called ilmenite. This is a compound that has as its base a large quantity of titanium, which is one of the hardest metals available on Earth. In fact, it's so strong that it's frequently used to create the structure of high-powered airplanes like the SR-71 Blackbird and submarines that dive to considerable depths. The unusual patches of surface ilmenite scattered across the moon's surface raise questions about why this heavy metal is so commonly found there and where exactly it came from. Other strange metallic properties on the surface of the moon include uranium-236 and neptunium-237. Also, iron was found in some quantities, but not the type of iron we have here on Earth. Instead, these particles were unique in that they could not rust. All three of these elements do not have natural origins based on what we know from gathering data on our own planet. How the moon was formed. Although a few theories about how the moon was created make more sense than others, There's no shortage of intriguing birth stories surrounding our natural satellite. Well before we sent men up there to gather evidence, some of the ideas just do not hold up today. You cannot discount the idea that the moon is actually an artificial construct or some type of large spacecraft parked to observe Earth for some reason. Other theories include the moment starting out as a piece of the Earth that broke off for some unexplained reason, that the moon is simply a conglomeration of small rocks and space dust floating around after the creation of the Earth. The moon was a separate entity attracted to its current orbit by Earth's gravity, or that something massive slammed into the Earth and its remains augmented the Earth's shape and formed the moon separately. There are problems with each of these theories. First, there's no explanation for part of the Earth suddenly breaking off and forming the moon. Why this would happen makes little sense based on commonly known information about planetary formation. While other moons in the solar system were formed by small space rocks and dust, our moon is considerably larger in relationship to the planet than any other in existence. There's no reason why Earth would have a greater quantity of orbiting rocks and dust in its early years. No evidence backs up the gravitational pull theory either. With larger celestial bodies around, why would the moon be attracted to Earth instead of into its own orbit around the sun? Orbital strangeness. An elementary school model of the solar system probably shows the planets moving around the sun and the moon around the Earth in roughly circular orbits. The truth is that most really follow an elliptical pattern. The moon's path does not follow this unusual path, however. Instead, it's much more like the childhood models. Its path is nearly a perfect circle. Besides spinning around its planet at an almost equal distances on all sides, the moon does another weird thing that other moons and planets do not. Instead of rotating faster or slower, it does so at the exact speed to always have the same side facing Earth. All objects have mass and therefore some type of gravitational pull at the center of their masses. This gravity center is not always at the physical center point of the orb, which would cause the object to wobble. Other moons around other planets that have this wobble are not spherical because centrifugal force pulls part of the material away from the center point. An off-center point creates off-center mass accumulation. Here is where Earth's moon gets weird again. The gravitational center isn't inside the middle of the moon at all. Instead, it's much, much closer to Earth. In fact, it's in between the empty space between itself and Earth. This keeps it in the front-facing orbit. Somehow it does so without wobbling at all. These coincidences and strange formations are so unlikely that they seem contrived rather than a simple chance occurrence. Perfect diameter of the moon. If you look around the solar system at the other planets and their moons, you see that they all share a common characteristic. The moons are much smaller than the planet they orbit. Earth and its moon, however, have a strange correlation of size that seems to be more than mere coincidence. Its diameter and its distance away from the Earth make it perfectly able to block out the sun during a solar eclipse. The moon is approximately 2,160 miles in diameter. The Earth is 7,915 miles across. While there are much larger moons, such as Ganymede at 3,274 miles in diameter, it orbits a much more massive planet, Jupiter. The relatively close size comparison between Earth and our moon is quite unusual. In fact, some scientists say that if the moon and Earth orbited each other or shared an orbit around the sun, they would be sister planets instead of planet and moon. The unusually large size is not only odd on its own, but also because the moon is the perfect size to cover the entire sun size when it comes between. Isaac Asimov stated that there's no real reason for this to be true. It's unique and only through the sheerest of coincidences that this is true. Flashes of lunar light. As far back into the past as the year 1540, astronomers and various scientists have reported visible flashes of light on the surface of the moon. These observances come not from some obscure unknown person on a forgotten scroll or tablet, but some of the most respected minds of early days. They include Plato, Biela, Aristarchus, Aristophanes, Rabbi Levi, and Poseidonus. NASA itself filed reports of these light anomalies in 1967, a year prior to their crafts landing on the surface. These mysterious lights are not only observed through high-powered telescopes, but also directly by the astronauts on their approach to the moon. Some surmise they might be small meteors or space junk hitting the moon and exploding. Others believe they have something to do with volcanic activity or gaseous jets erupting from the surface. The extraterrestrial explanation increases in popularity because of the lack of other ideas that actually fit the phenomenon. There's more to these flashes of light than short-lived bursts that could be space rock explosions. During an 1847 lunar eclipse, luminous points of light were observed by astronomer Sir John Herschel. He also reports lights that move across the surface a considerable distance. Some lights were white, others yellow, and even blue. Although a dark spot instead of a light, another example of transient lunar phenomenon are the dark fast walker spots that seem to fly across the surface of the moon. Unexplained natural phenomenon on the moon covers a wide range of topics, from a hollow core to moonquakes to mysterious moon rock metals and flashing and flying lights and objects. NASA and other images of the moon have revealed even more unusual mysteries. After careful observation and research, there appears to be several artificial structures built on the moon's surface. Number 1. Artificial crater bridges. John J. O'Neill, amateur astronomer, looked through his telescope and found something out of this world. The date was July 29, 1953, and the structure he found was a bridge that stretched 12 miles across one of the moon's large craters. Dr. H.P. Wilkins, professional astronomer in England, also saw it and simply said, "It looks artificial." Number 2. The Shard Obelisk. Near the Ukurt surface section stands another mysterious structure, this time the Shard, which is a 1.5-mile tall obelisk sticks out of the rocky surface of the moon. Dr. Bruce Cornett researched the photos brought back by 1968's Orbiter 3 space vehicle and stated, "No known natural process can explain." Number 3. The Tower. If the Shard was not big enough, the moon also holds a structure called the Tower. It soars 5 miles above the surface and has been photographed multiple times by NASA and the cameras on the Lunar Orbiter spacecraft. Apparently constructed out of huge cubes, the towering structure has no possible natural explanation. Is the moon a spaceship or the ancient home of aliens? Unusual space rocks, flashing lights, and structures seemingly created by intelligent hands all combine to form one of the most intriguing questions of all when it comes to the rock that orbits the Earth. Is our moon a spaceship or some type of base for extraterrestrial life now or in the far past? Well, some people dismiss the idea as silly. A mounting number of pieces of evidence point to not only a very unusual beginning, but ongoing anomalies that simply do not seem natural. When you combine it with the long ago tales of time before the moon existed, it starts to make sense that at some point our lunar companion was brought here by either an outrageous phenomenon or intelligent life forms. These stories were found in both ancient Greece and Rome. Such noted intellect as Aristotle, Plutarch, and Ovid all recorded tales of the Proselynes, a group of people who lived in Arcadia, which itself lied in the mountains of Greece. These real people staked their claim on the surrounding land because, as they explained, their ancestors had been there before the moon showed up in the night sky. Other evidence of a late arriving moon comes from Bolivia, where in the ancient symbolic depictions of the courtyard of Calasasaya wall, it's reported that the moon appeared approximately 11 to 13,000 years ago. Collected scientific data supports this theory, and nothing exists currently to disprove it. The long list of mysteries that surround the moon may never be solved unequivocally, although there are plans to send more men up there to walk across the lunar surface once more. Will the information they gather with today's new technology account for all the strange facts and phenomena the moon holds? The truth about the magnetic rocks, hollow core, misplaced metals, water vapor clouds, moonquakes, and mysterious flashes of light may remain in the realm of the unexplained. While scientists make theories and contradict each other, others believe in a more alien explanation. Whatever the causes, clues, and conclusions, the moon remains a very mysterious and enigmatic neighbor in space. Thanks for watching. Leave a like and hit the bell button to stay notified of the very latest documentaries.